Hey there, welcome back to another video. This time around, it is a review and a rant on one of the most disappointing horror anthologies that I've seen in quite a long time, and that is the 2019 film Deathcember, which, if you ask me, should be retitled to Dolph because it is an unbelievably dull, daft, tedious, uninspired, and downright crappy horror anthology. It's not one of the worst that I've seen. I wouldn't put it on the same level as Creepshow 3 or some of the other really bad horror anthologies, but it's still a bad horror anthology. It still suffers from the same issues that the worst horror anthologies suffer from. There's like maybe 4 or 5 segments that I legitimately liked all the way through out of 24. So that is a miserable ratio of successful stories. Horror anthologies and anthology films in general can be some of the most satisfying and some of the most entertaining films out there, but they can also be some of the worst because of the same reasons. If you have a good horror anthology, it's like watching multiple good films in one sitting. If you have a bad one, now you're watching multiple bad movies in one sitting. And with a particular structure like Deathcember, which is similar to ABCs of Death, if you don't have a good ratio of successful stories, it becomes incredibly difficult to sit through because you have like 2 hours of mostly bad or even worse content to slog through, and you might as well just be getting 24 lumps of coal right to the nutsack because that's about the same kind of experience that you get when you decide to sit down and watch Deathcember, because it's such a bad film when it comes to the ratio of good quality stories out of 24. So, just like another horror anthology that I saw fairly recently that I will be sharing my thoughts on in the future, this doesn't have a Wikipedia page, so I'm going to have to wing it. And thankfully, IMDb does have a listing of the directors of each short, and they're not in order, so I apologize for that. So I'm going to be reviewing each segment out of order, but thankfully, IMDb actually does have someone who's bothering to put the effort into making that page for the film. Otherwise, I'd be having to go off the top of my head, and I don't think the results would be that good. Yeah, I've just been noticing that a lot. A lot of people are not even bothering to make Wikipedia pages for certain films anymore. It's like they just cease to give a shit. And I know Wikipedia is a free thing, and it's essentially a volunteer service. And I understand. I don't want to spend my time making a page for Deathcember, but it was a nice resource to have. And I've noticed that with a few more films lately that are like bigger, well-known movies that they don't even have a page, which is a little disappointing, but not as disappointing as this film. So the first segment I'm going to talk about is Aurora, directed by Lazar Badroza. Bad is right. I mean, it's very fitting that the director's last name has bad in it, because this is a bad segment. I don't know what the fuck is going on half the time. It takes place in some post-apocalyptic future, and you have people that are in lockdown, and there's something about germinating seeds on the Earth's surface, and something occurs that involves an error, and humans get exposed to these seeds, and then they die, and there's some message I think about like communism or something, and they're just like, what the fuck did I just watch? I have no clue what the fuck is going on, what it has to do with Christmas, what it has to do with anything resembling an ounce of sense. Visually, there was some decent CGI in terms of trying to create the atmosphere, but it was such a awful segment because it's one of those where it's just what the fuck is even going on, and then by the end of it you still don't know what the fuck happened, and completely pointless. So yeah, you'll notice that I probably will not have a whole lot to say about some of these segments because first off, they're so short, and also a lot of them are pretty fucking worthless. There isn't much to them anyway. The next one is called They Used to Laugh and Call Him Names, directed by BJ Colangelo. And I believe Zachary Shieldwatcher also helped direct it. I think that's the one that involves this guy who doesn't like Christmas. He gets invited to stay at this cabin, and he takes off all the Christmas decorations. He hears a knock on the door. Well, actually, before he hears a knock on the door, he goes and checks under the tree, sees that there's a present for him, but it's marked "Don't open till Christmas." But he doesn't want to wait, so he starts to open it, but then he's interrupted by a knock on the door. It's a bunch of Christmas carolers. He hates Christmas carolers. And then the Christmas carolers just storm through the door, and they completely overcome him. They subdue him, they tie him up, and they're like singing and smiling as they cut his leg off. And it's all done practically. And I actually liked this segment because of how creepy it is. I've always felt that super happy people are creepy anyway. I hated when I had to do that shit when I worked at the movie theater, where I had to have this fake ass smile on my face all the time. Hey, how are you doing today? I hated that because it's so unnatural and it's eerie. And I feel that this segment does an excellent job capturing how creepy that really is. Just have this cavalcade of carolers with creepy grins on their faces, singing Christmas carols while they saw this guy's leg off, misery style. And I think they wind up cutting his head off too, or something like that. The guy definitely succumbs to a very horrible demise. But yeah, it's a short segment, but it works because the concept is actually quite creepy. It's got some good practical effects, and it doesn't overstay its welcome. That is one of the few segments from this film that I thought was actually good. So, the next one is by John Cook Lynch, and it's called Cracker. This is another one I liked. This one was unique. That's the big reason why I liked it so much. It has this look, feel, and vibe of like a magazine from the 50s or 60s in terms of its color. It's very vibrant, and the contrast is turned up. And it's a take on the Christmas cracker thing, which is really popular with British um, citizens when it comes to their holidays. And it's like this company called, I think, Lunar Falls, and they have this Christmas cracker celebration, and the reason why they do it is so they can control population, because originally this was a colony that lived on the moon, but then something happened and they had to separate from the moon, and the colony is now on this spaceship that's floating through space. And in order to be able to sustain all these people consistently, some people have to get offed. So they do it by having this Christmas cracker celebration where people are put in rooms, and it's like it's all Christmassy. You have tinsel, and they are sitting at the dinner table with a Christmas dinner, and they're supposed to pull a cracker, and somebody, some poor soul, is going to pull the cracker that's actually going to blow their head up. And it's all done practically. Good gore. I like the sense of humor. It's very twisted and dark. And I thought the twist was actually pretty unique with the whole idea of a space colony. And overall, I liked it. I liked Cracker. I thought it had a good sense of humor, had a good sense of style when it comes to the direction. And yeah, that was one of my favorites from the film. That doesn't really have a whole lot of favorites, to be honest. The next one is called Family Matters. It's directed by Steve D. Roover. This one, it deals with this guy who is dating this girl. He goes to the girl's parents' house for Christmas dinner, I think. And it becomes this weird ass initiation ritual where he has to like cut a hole in his stomach so an alien worm can come inside his body from the father who expunges it and just lets it loose from his chest. And I guess it's supposed to be some criticism or allegory or bit of deep thoughts about what you sacrifice in order to be in a relationship, but it's so muddled and messy. I don't even know if that's even the case. It's just a weird ass segment that is too short to really explain what the fuck is going on. And it's got some decent effects with the alien worms and whatever. Creepy shot of the guy looking in the mirror and there's like a worm in his eyeball. But it doesn't make that much sense. You don't know why the worms are there. You don't know what the fuck they're supposed to be. And you don't know why the guy is right as rain after he cuts his stomach open. I guess the worms also have healing properties that they give to their hosts. I don't even what. There's a lot of segments like that in this film where you're just like, what the fuck? Like, what even is the fucking point? So yeah, I wasn't really that big of a fan of that one. Then you have one directed by Ruggero Deodato. Yes, that Ruggero Deodato. Called Casetta Sperduta in Campania. And this one, the biggest amount of intrigue that you get with this segment is the fact that it's directed by Deodato. Other than that, it's very cliched, it's very been there, done that, and it's very predictable. It's another story that involves a prank gone wrong. Oh, it looks like the family has killed themselves or they've been murdered. But no, it's just a prank. They're trying to pull on the daughter or something like that. And then oh, it predictably ends with the girl, the daughter killing herself, hanging herself with Christmas lights. Pointless. Fucking pointless. The next one is Joy to the Girls by Sonia Escalano. And before I get into sharing more thoughts on that one, I want to comment on Diodato's direction in his segment. It's nothing that impressive, especially the camera that he used and how he worked with the aperture settings. Things are very washed out in terms of the colors. It looks like it was shot on a digital camera. So, yeah, not impressive when it comes to the directing either. And it's from a guy who's very capable of doing some impressive direction. So, yeah, that one didn't work. The next one really didn't work. Joy to the Girls by Sonia Escalano. The direction is fine. The director clearly has a good sense of visual style. But it's such a fucking worthless segment and story. It's a bunch of guys who are so desperate for pussy, they answer a letter that they get in the mail from a complete unknown person, and it tells them to go to a hotel room. There are red flags everywhere that might as well be lit in fucking neon, but these guys they're so fucking desperate for pussy. They don't give a shit. So they go to the hotel, they meet a bunch of hot girls, and predictably they get killed. So this guy comes to the hotel, he thinks he's gonna come in a completely different way, but instead, all that happens is winds up getting wet with his own blood because he gets his throat slit, and because the girls are a bunch of Satan worshippers. And the segment ends with another guy who is once again addicted to pussy, and he's gonna be the next victim. That's it. I just don't understand why you would make a horror anthology and have 24 segments and then put so little effort into these stories. I know a lot of them are films by certain directors and filmmakers, but still, put some more fucking effort into your contribution. Because if you put more effort into it, you'll get more eyes on your work, and you'll get more people to actually think, maybe we might want to hire this director to do something in the future. You actually will provide something for investors or studios or other people to be willing to hire you for a job that might be opening up in the future. By just half-assing it, you do nothing to give them any reason why they should look at you and be like, yeah, you're the right person for the job. The next one is by Isaac Esban. It's called Villancicos. I can't pronounce it. Butchered it. My apologies. I think it's a Spanish segment. It's well shot. It's basically from the POV of one character, which was unique. And it deals with this guy who's terminally ill, and his family has tried everything to keep him alive, but then they try one last ditch effort and they bring in this choir and they start singing, and that keeps him alive, and then it just devolves into complete nightmare fuel and just random bullshit because for some reason, as long as the choir keeps singing, this guy keeps breathing. So then you keep seeing shots that take place further and further in the future where he's older and the kids are now older and the kids get old and decrepit and they're chained to the wall and they're singing and singing and the guy's still alive, and it's insinuated and hinted at that there's like an apocalypse going on in the background, and it ends with the guy waking up, getting out of his hospital bed, and killing the one guy who was left singing, and then he dies. And that's it. The ending makes it completely pointless, worthless, and not much of anything. I'll give it credit for some creativity and some well put together direction, but other than that, it really isn't much to it. The next one is called Xmas on Fire. It's by Florian Ferrix. The direction is fine, but this has no place in a horror anthology. Why the fuck is this in this particular film? Just like, why was Aurora in there? This one sticks out like a sore thumb because it's just a failed heist story. It's just as generic and cliched and white bread and just plain saltine cracker as any of those other failed heist stories that you've seen done a million times. The only difference is it takes place on Christmas, and there's a twist where the guy who is having his jewelry store robbed was actually in on the robbery the whole time, and he's the one that gets away with it in the end. So yeah, I don't Xmas on fire, more like light this fucking segment on fire and burn it. because at least that would have some use. Use this segment for firewood. Then it could warm up somebody's house. Then you have Family Feast by Remy Frechette. Just like a lot of these other short stories, these short films, the direction is fine. Sometimes the performances are fine. But the story is just, I keep mentioning and I've been repeating the word pointless ad nauseum, but that's the best way to put it. These stories, ultimately, most of them either don't make any sense or are completely devoid of anything that will really stick with you, that really makes you think, or is really anything you haven't seen done before in other short films or segments in an anthology. This one deals with this woman who's having a party, or she's a visitor at a family party for the holidays. She's stressed out because of the holidays, and she starts seeing hallucinations, people with fucked up faces, the color and the lighting in the rooms shifts. So she just starts tripping out. She sees this one drunken Santa Claus guy, and he looks like he's a demon, so she stabs him to death on the knife, and the segment intercuts the reactions of people who don't see what she's seeing, so they think she just snapped and killed this guy, and that's it. That's all the segment is. This woman gets stressed out, starts hallucinating, trips balls, stabs a fucking guy in the chest with a knife, while her family watches in horror, and that's fucking it. So, the next one is called Kill Santa, directed by Sadrach Gonzalez Perleon. I don't know what the real story is with this segment. There's these two girls who are emotional. There's even a scene where the director has this shot that is really up close and personal on these girls while they're crying. It's really weird and awkward. And by their conversations, you get the idea that their father is some kind of abusive asshole, or maybe he molested one of them. And the little girl says she's going to kill him. And then there's a Santa Claus. I don't know if it's the father or not. It wasn't really made that quite clear. If it was, I was so bored by the film at that point. I did not give a fuck. So it just ends with them killing Santa. One of them, the older girl, picks up an axe and cuts Santa Claus's head off. It's like a department store Santa. Could be their father, could not be. They just snapped because their father abused them while he was dressed as Santa, and they just wanted to start killing all Santas. I don't know what the fuck was even the point of it. Kill Santa would have been better if Chris Farley showed up and was just doing that whole routine from Black Sheep, and he's just like, kill Whitey, kill Santa, yeah. Oh man, the next one is called Operation Dolph. It's directed by Trent Haaga. This one features what I think is supposed to actually be Santa Claus. It's some fat guy with sunglasses and a red beard, because I think he's a redhead, and he goes on a killing spree. It's like a revenge story where somebody has kidnapped something that he cares for, or someone that he cares for, and he goes on this revenge spree. He kills this woman, kills her kids. I'll give the segment credit for that. Has the balls to do that. He gets stabbed in the chest and still keeps ticking. Then he gets shot multiple times and he still keeps ticking. I'm like, what is this guy? A fucking Terminator? Why the hell is this guy surviving all of these shots and these stabbings? I mean, he's been stabbed, he's been shot, and he's still strong enough to stomp a guy's head into paste. And the twist is that who he is trying to rescue and get revenge for is a fucking reindeer. That's what Operation Dolph is. He goes and tries to rescue a reindeer. And yeah, it's insinuated that he actually is Santa Claus because there's a line of dialogue, "We got a lot of work to do." It's like, what? This segment would have been way better if he actually was on an operation to save Dolph Lundgren. I mean, can you imagine that? Like, he goes into the tent and there's Dolph tied up and he saves Dolph Lundgren. I would give the segment a lot of credit if he actually went and tried to save Dolph. But no, instead it's just a fucking reindeer. The next one is called Crappy Christmas, Operation Christmas Child, directed by Jurgen Kling. First off, I have to mention this. What the fuck is wrong with this director? What happened to you when you were a kid? What is going on in your fucking head? Because this is one fucked up segment. It's all done in claymation, which I will give it credit for. And it's fairly well done claymation. And it does have a lot of creativity. But Crappy Christmas is an understatement. It really should have been called Fucked Up Christmas. Because it's one of the more fucked up segments that I've ever seen. So you have what I guess is supposed to be a kid and gets kidnapped by these priests who chain him up and throw him in this room and lock the door. And then they take him out every now and then just to fuck him in the ass. I'm not kidding you. That's what happens in this movie. I mean, in this segment from this film. This kid gets repeatedly fucked in the ass by these evil priests. One of which even fucks him in the ass with a dildo. So yeah, you got anal child rape in this fucking segment. And it's all done in claymation. And the kid ultimately, I guess what happens is Krampus visits the church, leaves some presents for the kid. He uses them to fight back. And it's all gory, and it's actually really creative and actually a lot of fun. The kid takes a slingshot and fires some Viagra into one of the priest's mouths, and it makes his dick have like such a massive erection that his dick smashes through this other priest's head. And then the kid takes the dildo and beats the priest to death with it. And I was kind of alright with the segment, despite how fucked up it was, until the ending. It's your bullshit kind of ending where he runs out in the middle of the street and gets hit by a fucking truck. And it's like, happy holidays, crappy Christmas. And I'm like, fuck you. The kid's been through enough. The kid's been raped in the ass. Can you just let him live? Fuck's sake. Come on. But yeah, what the fuck is wrong with that director? Get some help. Get some fucking therapy, Jurgen. The next one is called Five Deaths in Blood Red by Amalia. I like this one because it was a love letter to giallo slashers. I'm a big fan of giallo slasher films. This had the visuals. It really copied a lot of the lighting and the cinematography and the way that they're edited. It even had a pretty bad bit of ADR and dubbing, which I think was intentional. At first I was like, this sound design and this ADR is awful. But then I remember that it's trying to be a giallo slasher movie, and I was like, this is probably intentional. So this is actually quite clever. Unlike Operation Dolph, for instance, that had horrible ADR, or some of the other segments in the film, this was intentional. It had a good amount of gore and blood, a ton of style. The story was a little predictable, but had a decent payoff. Overall, I liked it. I liked that one. That was one of the better segments. The next one is called Santa is Coming, directed by Sang-Woo Lee. The direction in this is actually quite good. I thought he did a great job directing this segment. It has a really nice bit of atmosphere to it. I liked all the references to horror Blu-rays or VHS. Uh, there's actually a few shots in the film that show some Arrow Video Blu-rays. That was a fun little touch. But it's another one of those segments that doesn't make any sense, and you're like, what the fuck is going on here? There's this guy who's addicted to horror movies. I guess it's his daughter. He lives with her, or it's his younger sister. I don't know which is which, to be honest. And the girl is like psycho, was like cutting up her doll. She attacks the guy with scissors, cuts up his ear. He throws her off. And then there's a shot later where he's giving her a Christmas present, and it's her dead sister in a Christmas present box. And it's now her new doll. And there's a shot at the end of the segment where they're like standing together side by side, like they're the twins from The Shining. And then the camera goes fuzzy. I'm like, what the fuck? So, yeah, it's well directed. I like the references to horror films and everything. Some nice meta stuff here, but it doesn't make any fucking sense. Then you have Pig, directed by Andreas Marshall. This is one of the best looking segments. I love the atmosphere. I love the style. I love the use of lighting and editing to make it look like it's taking place entirely in a nightclub, because that's where most of the segment takes place, is inside a nightclub. So I really like the fact that that carries over throughout the entirety of the segment, even in scenes that don't actually take place in the nightclub, on the dance floor. And I didn't mind the idea of a bunch of sexist, rapist assholes getting their comeuppance by a group of women who wanted revenge on these pieces of shit for raping and abusing them. I like that concept. A group of women who all had one thing in common. They were abused and raped and psychologically devastated by these fucking assholes, and they decided to take matters into their own hands, and they kidnap one of them. They put a rubber pig mask on his head. They break his fucking leg, and it's all done practically, and you see the bone go through the skin. But then it's all completely thrown away and flushed down the toilet with the last shot of the film and the last bit of dialogue. You find out that the guy that they think is one of the men who subjected them to rape and psychological torture is actually not the right guy. It's someone else. But they still wind up killing him anyway with a ruler. It's not really a ruler, it's a tape measure that's sharpened to a point, and they shove it up his nose, and they kill him anyway because it doesn't matter, because they're all the same. Get it? All men are pigs. Fuck you. I'm so sick and tired of that social justice warrior shitty fucking argument. If this was a segment that featured a bunch of women who were into sex and were always trying to get sex and even sexually assaulted some guys, and they decided to get revenge on these women, and they realized they got the wrong girl and killed her anyway because all women are the same and all women are whores, people would be absolutely up in arms. But because it's men, it's somehow not sexist. It's somehow not ridiculously over the top in terms of its political correctness or incorrectness in this point, because it's just flat out incorrect. It's not true. at all in the slightest. And it's not like it actually shows these women getting their comeuppance in some way later on for deciding that all men are pigs. No, it's basically just left there out in the open that all men are pigs. So fuck that segment, fuck the director, fuck the writer, and just fuck that whole segment up its fucking ass. Then you have Christmas Corp, like .se. I'm trying to even remember what the fuck that one was. I really don't remember what that one was, to be honest. That's the problem. There's a lot of these segments that are just forgettable. Who cares? So I don't remember really much of anything about that one. Then you have one by Pollyanna McIntosh called Getting Away from It All. I think that's actually the one with the guy. Yeah, that's the one with the guy who winds up getting his foot cut off. They used to laugh and call him names is a different one entirely. Um, I'm going to skip the ones that I don't really remember, and then I'll get back to them. So you might see a little bit of an edit when I get back to those ones. The next one I remember is They Once Had Horses, directed by Lucky McKee. I like the style of this segment. It's black and white. I like the fact that it's a period piece. The performances by the cast are great. I like the atmosphere and the mood. There's some fun lines of dialogue, but it feels like a letdown because you don't really see the monster, and the two characters end up dying in the end. So it's just like, I'll take it over the other segments that don't make any sense or are just irritating in other ways. But it's still not what I would call a great segment. It's okay. Then you have The Hunchback of Burg Hain by Bob Pipe. This one goes on forever. It's a take on a silent movie. So it's like The Hunchback of Notre Dame, and he's going to get hanged or burned. He's going to get burned at the stake. And the governor comes and he pardons him. I don't even think there really is a governor in middle age, in the Middle Ages, but okay. So I guess maybe it's the king. So he gets pardoned because it's a Christmas pardon. And then you see scenes of the hunchback getting doted on by a bunch of people. These girls are actually attracted to him. He gets fed a feast. He's being treated like a king. And then I picked up immediately on what the twist was going to be at that point. It's all a dream. Yep, it's all a dream, and he burns at the stake. The next one is Bad Santa, directed by Julian Richards. No, it has nothing to do with the other Bad Santa. You have this family who tells their kid that he better behave or Santa Claus is going to get him or something along that. Krampus. He mentions Krampus. He better behave or Krampus is going to get him. The father dresses up as Krampus, goes to scare the crap out of the kids. It's another one that's very similar to like the one that Deodato did. And the twist is that their daughter believed in the story so much that she took a knife and hid it behind her and then stabs the dad to death. But then there's a fucking other twist at the end that he's alive. I guess it was Krampus that she killed. I guess that was the whole thing. It wasn't the father. Because it just doesn't register, or maybe I missed something, but it just doesn't really seem that clear. And the father's still alive. They're opening presents, and one of the presents is a fake butcher knife that the guy was carrying. So if it was Krampus, why the fuck would Krampus be carrying around a fake butcher knife? I don't... Bad Santa's right. It's a bad segment and full of bad storytelling. Then you have Before Sundown, directed by Jason Rostovsky. I really like this one. It deals with a Jewish legend that I really hadn't really heard that much about. And I don't even know if it's actually real, but I would think so, since I think it's by someone who is of the Jewish faith. About how if children don't return home in time on certain, I think it's a Christmas or the holidays or something like that, they will get taken by these creatures that hide in the night, and they have to return home before sundown. And if they don't, then they'll get attacked by these monsters. And it's a simple but effective segment of these two teenagers who are riding on their bikes, and the kid shares the legend, and it turns out to be true, and they survive despite the odds. And I liked it a lot because they actually live. It's not one of those depressing bullshit stories that, to be honest, most of these segments are, where everybody fucking dies. So I like that. It had a decent amount of practical effects. Not a whole lot because they didn't have much to work with in terms of a budget. But you saw a little glimpse of what the monsters looked like. And I liked the way it was directed. Some good performances by the cast. And overall, I thought it was a winner. The next one, I don't remember. So I'm going to have to get back to that one. Then we have Dominic Saxel, who directed A Door Too Far, which is the first segment. Predictable, boring, useless. It's this kid who's a fat fuck who eats all the candy out of the advent calendar, and he's such a fat fuck he can't control himself, so he goes to the convenience store and starts eating the candy out of the advent calendars without paying. He then runs into this old guy with a pentagram necklace who curses him. And I'm like, yeah, he's going to turn into a chocolate candy and he's going to get eaten by somebody. Yep, that's exactly what fucking happens. He's asleep one night, half his face turns into melted chocolate, which looks like shit. Literal shit. So I guess you could say that he was shit-faced. Then the last shot is he's a candy, and a girl opens the door of the advent calendar and grabs him and eats his ass. Then you have December the 19th, directed by Milan Todorovic. This has some really good gore. A girl gets a skate to her forehead. She gets her fingers cut off. It's a really gory segment, but it's overlong. And it's really ridiculous when it comes to how the gore comes to play. It's these two girls insinuated they might have a crush on each other, and they go on an ice skating rink, and they're clumsy as fuck, and one of them cuts off this girl's finger. The other girl winds up with a skate in her forehead. I think they both just wind up dying because they just slip and fall and don't know how to fucking skate. And that's basically... Oh, actually, yeah, one of the girls, she survives. The girl who did the most damage. Because she doesn't really get as much when it comes to the injuries. She doesn't suffer as much bodily harm as the other girl. So she gets away and then gets hit by a bus, I think. So, whatever. It's only watchable for the gore, and that's it. Then you have All Sales Fatal by Michael Verratti. This one, you can tell it's a lower budget. You can tell the director hasn't done a whole lot. The performances aren't the most polished, but the idea was clever, and I work in retail, so it was very cathartic to see a segment where the retail worker, the retail employee, gets to beat the customer's ass. I didn't like the fact that he died in the end. That brought it down for me. But it had a good sense of humor. It was warped, but it worked. And some good bits of blood and shenanigans. And it was just very cathartic for me because it deals with this retail employee, dealing with this unruly guest who doesn't want to take no for an answer when she doesn't have a receipt for her return. It leads to a outright brawl between the two, and it gets really bloody. And by the end of it, she actually finds the receipt in her purse, and she's all throws it at him while he's laying in there on the floor bleeding. And is like, "Oh, I found it. Can you give me my money back?" Yeah, I didn't mind that one because, in large part, because I can sympathize with the retail worker, and it was really cathartic, and it was a bit of a fantasy to see an employee just jump over the counter and start beating the guest's ass, beating the customer's ass. Uh, because to be honest, if you've worked in retail, especially around the holidays, you've had that thought. You've had that fantasy. You've had that dream of jumping over the counter and just whooping their ass. So that was fun. Next one's called A Christmas Miracle, directed by Vivian Vaughn. Another one that's well directed, nice sense of visual style, but I didn't care that much about the story. Barbara Crampton here has a cameo as, I guess, some ghost or some demon or succubus who tricks this woman into going to the grave of her dead kid on Christmas Eve, because I guess the Barbara Crampton is telling her that I'll give you a Christmas miracle, and it's not a miracle at all because she winds up dead, frozen to death, and the ghost or the demon chick just takes the reborn kid that I guess she found a way to use her demon powers to bring back to life, and she just takes it away, and that's the end of the fucking segment. And one more I want to talk about before I backtrack and talk about the ones that I forgot is Milk and Cookies by Sam Wineman. Another one that I liked because you sympathize for the kid. He has a father who's an abusive asshole who doesn't like the fact that he's different. Oh, you like ponies? Fuck you, kid. I'm gonna take your pony and I'm gonna break it and I'm gonna beat your ass later. It's like, ooh, this guy was really a piece of work to say the least. More like a piece of shit, and the biggest kind. And the kid, understandably, doesn't want to be with his dad anymore. He wants to be with his dad's sister, who actually cares about him. So he starts writing letters to Santa. At first, he writes a letter to Santa to give him back his horse, and then he's surprised when his horse shows up and it's been fixed. But his dad doesn't take no for an answer and grabs the horse and breaks it again and throws it in the trash. Sets the kid off, who then writes another letter to Santa, this time asking for his dad to be taken out of his life, and Santa obliges. And Santa in this, I don't know if it's actually the real Santa Claus or it's like some guy who's dressed as Santa, some psycho who somehow has the ability to have access to this kid's letters. But that's the only part that I didn't really like because it didn't really make a whole lot of sense. But overall, I liked it because the asshole dad gets his comeuppance, the kid gets to live with his sister, and I guess the only thing that I would have liked to have seen more of is maybe more of the comeuppance. I was expecting to see the guy's head on the Christmas tree in place of the star, but they didn't go that route. But overall, it's still a good segment. Yeah, the reason why I didn't remember some of those other segments is because they are played in the mid and end credits of this film. They don't tell you about that. You get no idea or inkling that there are two more segments that are going to be in this movie and they're going to be featured within the credits. So, you can't blame me for not remembering them because I didn't fucking watch them the first time around because I didn't think there was going to be two segments in the middle of the credits. Who thinks that's going to be the case? It's also marketed as 24 stories, and there's two bonus segments apparently. So, no wonder I didn't remember those segments and got something like Getting Away from It All by Pollyanna McIntosh confused with They Used to Laugh and Call Him Names. But anyway, They Used to Laugh and Call Him Names is actually the one directed by BJ Colangelo, and it's the last segment in the film. And it's fitting that it's another shitty segment for a shitty film because it's a typical, you got a bunch of, well, you have this family, you have this kid, so you have a kid, a mom, and a dad, and the kid is bullied and is a bit of a nerd. So the dad takes him to the woods to do some hunting, and they run into some demon reindeer that kills the dad, and the effects are awful. And then the mom gets barfed on by the reindeer, and then the reindeer kills the mom and kills the kid, and that's fucking it. It's just demon reindeer. Wow. Okay. Such a bonus. Then the other one is Christmas Corpse, directed by Annika Marks. And the direction, I think it's slick. I like the use of the red lighting, but it's just something to do with like a bunch of people in an office. They're having an office party. There's something to do with some kind of promotion or something that's at play. A bunch of people get possessed, and they go on a little bit of a killing spree. And the lead character, who's the main focus of the segment, which is this woman, this girl, she winds up getting possessed, goes up to the boss, and is about to kill him. End credits. I mean, end of the segment. Another one of those who gives a fuck kind of segments. So yeah, that's Deathcember. Uh, I really don't know what else to say about it other than one other thing I wanted to mention is the really cheap looking opening credits with the really crappy looking CGI. And it uses this theme throughout that is so generic. It sounds like it's just a rip-off of Harry Potter. It sounds like as close as you can get to ripping off the main theme from Harry Potter without getting sued. So yeah, this might have well have been an advent calendar with nothing but windows of garbage. Like you open up the window and instead of chocolate, you get shit. You get pieces of shit. And maybe like 3 or 4 pieces of chocolate, but they don't even taste that great. Yeah, I would not recommend Deathcember. I hope you enjoyed my review of the film, though. And I apologize for getting one of the segments mixed up. But you can't blame me because I didn't think there were 2 other segments in the fucking end credits. But anyway, thanks for watching my review. And as always, I'll see you later.